Hi, I'm Tapp-McDougall, and I'm the publisher of Caregiver Solutions magazine. I'm also the author of the Complete Canadian Elder Care Guide. And my latest venture is I've started a not-for-profit association that's called Canada Cares. And what we're all about is recognizing and building awareness around caregiving. Many of you and lots of other Canadians from coast to coast are caregivers. We know that you're spending an average of 35 hours a month in unpaid caregiving time. And we also know that you've given up time with your families, you've given up time at work, you've got some stress, and also your personal time has probably gone out the window. Caregiving is no longer a secret, it's actually a concern. It's a concern for governments, it's a concern for families, it's a concern for employers. It's been said that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who need caregiving. If you've really looked at the news lately, what you've seen is that there's lots of statistics around. Let's take a look at a few of them about caregiving. What we know is that there are more people than ever that are going to be reaching the age of 65. 1 in 4 adults over the age of 45 is providing care, and the average age of a caregiver is just 45. And it's younger than you think in terms of the relationship with that person who's receiving care. They're only 78. So it goes without saying that most of us, somewhere in our lives, are going to be touched by caregiving. It's going to be the person next to us at work. It's going to be somebody in our family. It's going to be a friend. And what we'll be asked to do is we'll be asked to make choices. Choices about how to provide care, choices about how to spend money, choices about how much time we're prepared to give. All of our circumstances will differ, but one thing we'll have in common. It's going to be the need to care and cope and not collapse. Let's face it, I would have been fired over the last decade if I'd worked for anybody but myself. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. Ralph, my dad, died of ALS, and although my mum survived him and lived to be 86, she spent the last 11 and a half years stroke disabled. She couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, she couldn't even feed herself. And that all happened just pre-Christmas one day. It was just a normal day. And all of a sudden, all of our lives had changed. I had to exit from my family life. I had to exit from my volunteer commitments. And needless to say, I wasn't at work. We had to sell our house. We had to find a long-term care facility. Her car was no longer useful. Things were different. There was an army of people in our lives. OTs, PTs, discharge planners. She was distraught, and so was I. My active 76-year-old mother at the time, who hiked, gardened, oil painted, volunteered, couldn't even feed herself and couldn't speak to tell me what she needed. I tell you this story not because I need sympathy. We managed quite well, actually, but it's because I understand what caregiving is all about firsthand. We know that there are rewarding moments, but overall, being a caregiver takes its toll and it's extremely stressful. Think for a second about all the things you're expected to do for someone. There are those of you in this room, I'm sure, who've taken people to the toilet, who've changed diapers, who've been to the doctor's office, who've spent hours consoling somebody. The list goes on. And then think of the things that you're supposed to do in your average day. Not easy, is it? The stress, fatigue, lack of sleep, social isolation, and grief leads to caregiver burnout. And you're probably physically and emotionally spent a lot of the time. Caregiving is hard. And it doesn't start or end between 9 and 5. And you never feel like you're doing enough, do you? It's difficult for your marriage. You feel anxious, depressed, and irritable. The list goes on. People are unable to concentrate. They cry easily. They've given up hobbies. And some people even have an increased dependence on having an extra drink or two. It's hard to quit smoking, all those extra things. So as a caregiver, how do you cope? At Canada Cares, one of the things we're doing is we're trying to provide extra support and resources for caregivers from coast to coast. And we're actually going to have a very fun campaign that we'll be launching in November. So hopefully all of you will stay with us and join us in November. But what I've done today is put through a series of suggestions from my own experiences and from a lot of the healthcare professionals that I work with. So let's look at some tips. Number 1. Try to keep your sense of humor. Now, that's a funny first tip, probably. But what I've found with the caregivers that manage to survive this is that there's an element of the nasty or difficult in caregiving all the time. So if you try to see humor in this situation and you surround yourself in the rest of your life with people who are positive, who can tell a joke and who can realize what's going on, it will help you. It really will. Don't get overtired. When we're hungry, exhausted, or more irritable, it's much easier to get overwhelmed. It's much easier to snap the doctor's head off when he tells you some bad news or to get irritated with people. So I've learned to try to not get overtired. I learned to budget my time at the long-term care facility. I would whip in and out on a schedule so that I didn't get embroiled in too much sadness or too much difficulty. I worked to a routine, just like I did in the rest of my life. I tried to take care of myself. I did healthy things, and I built up my resistance. I exercised, and I repumped my energy on a regular basis. I learned to say no and not feel guilty. I think one of the most difficult things for caregivers is to pace themselves and not feel that they have to do everything all the time. And after a while, when I couldn't shoulder things myself, I actually learned to ask for help, and I actually hired a part-time caregiver, and I worked with the volunteer resources in the community. Even though Mom was in a long-term care facility, we needed extra help. And I tried to do normal things. What's a normal thing? Well, pick out pretty clothes for your mom, a new shirt for your dad. When your loved one looks tidy and clean, funnily enough, you feel more comfortable because you think things are more normal. Go for an ice cream cone if you can. Go for a walk. Do things that are normal. Celebrate birthdays. If you can find the resources in the community as well, it's very, very important. And there are a lot of good organizations that are out there that can help you now find what you need. It's just that you have to figure out what it is you need, and you have to start asking some of the right questions. OTs, PTs, discharge planners, your family doctor, there are a lot of people that can provide you with support if you just ask. And there's no harm in also asking a friend or somebody at church to lend a hand. It was also my good fortune to have a great hospital staff, a pastor, and a number of volunteers to help us through the palliative care journey. Palliative care is terribly difficult, but when people try to do it alone, it's even harder. My team looked after me as much as they did my mom. Focus on what you're able to provide. You're never going to feel like you're doing enough, but try not to give in to the guilt. And recognize that no one is a perfect caregiver, just like I wasn't a perfect mom. Can't believe that, but nobody's perfect. And there are only 24 hours in your day. So do the best you can and celebrate what you are able to do. Look back and remember those afternoons when you did manage to make it there for tea, or when you were able to read a book, or when you were able to enjoy taking Mom to get her hair done, or showing Dad some of the family photos that he used to enjoy. As I've said before, maintain your own health. Don't forgo the regular tests. I talk to a lot of people, they can't make it to their mammogram appointment, or they've, got this nagging pain in their back that they're not taking care of. Keep up with your own health as a priority, because if you're burned out and you're not feeling well, you are not going to be any good as a caregiver. So when you stay physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy, you're the best caregiver you can be. And find me time every day. A worn-out caregiver, as I said, is not going to be any use to anybody. Taking breaks is not selfish. It's self-preservation, and it's for you and your loved one. Respite care provides regular caregivers with much time off and a much needed break. So learn that respite word and ask about it in your community. And choose people around you who make you feel good and who share good activities with you when you do have time off. Don't be taking on other people's problems if you can help it. Stick with a positive group of people. And breathe. I have a friend who's a chiropractor, and every time she sees me, after she says hello, she says, "Caroline, breathe." Breathing is good for you. It relieves tension, stress, and relieves emotional problems as well. And it leads to clearer thinking. So when it's getting too tough, take a few seconds and just breathe. And it's amazing when you stop and refocus what it'll do. And lastly, be thankful. And I know that's hard when you're talking about caregiving, but I'm thankful for the time that I spent with my mom. It was difficult, but we bonded and we spent good time together. And it gave me a chance to pay back for all the time that she spent with me in my early years. And I'm grateful for that. And I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that when push came to shove, I could be there for her and I could do some pretty incredible things. And for that, I'm grateful. So be thankful. And as the saying goes, from adversity comes opportunity, strength, and greatness. So I wish all of you the best of health and the best of luck in your caregiving journey. Thank you.